light so the camera starts sweating.
Yeah, the bright one. Did you know we're quasi-matching today?
Yeah.
Did you see that?
Well, we usually call each other, but
we didn't get a chance to call each other this time. No. Hey, Timeout Tuesday.
What's going on? It's Timeout Tuesday. A little bit different. These are the smallest chairs I've ever sat in, by the way.
Well, that's what we were talking about. We got a laugh out of this on the way in.
Mm-hmm.
We're either going to be here just a very, very short time today.
Because we can't stand.
So this is either going to be like the first ever 1.5 minute long Timeout Tuesday, or this is going to be a 2 hour Timeout Tuesday just because Caleb and I can't get up.
Yeah, mainly me because you mentioned that I was older.
He said it, not me. We are doing Timeout Tuesday. Caleb is back. Caleb, we're doing this live on air. I won't be here next week. I'll be out of town, so somebody else will be filling in.
Yeah, I get to do it with you, without you.
Yeah.
Let's see. Maybe some people will join in and volunteer to come up here and hang out with me.
You better be careful with that invitation, or you might end up with a full classroom of people.
I'm good.
Oh, okay. So you hear that? You're here. Caleb's open invitation to join him next week. So y'all come hang out as Caleb pushes the table back so his knees don't.
Yeah.
What's the worst thing that could happen? It fall off?
Nothing against Priuses, but I feel like this would be like me in a Prius.
You and I think could both use. We drive trucks. I think we could both use to drive a Prius for this season.
Well, for the gas mileage, but I'm saying this is what it would feel like for me to drive one. I'd be like, yeah. So
that's almost exactly what sound like too when they're going 60 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Where are we going to be at today?
Well, we're in the children's building, first of all, for a couple of reasons.
Let's read.
Yeah, let's read the Holy Bible.
Miss Nancy, thank you in advance for letting us use your class. We appreciate it.
And if you didn't know, even though you have to read it backwards, I can choose to get along with others. I can choose to do what is right. So those are just some basic biblical principles.
And I can choose to get along with others. I can choose to do what is right. Plays a special part in the context that we're talking about today.
It does. Yeah, we get a lot of questions. Well, the reason we're in this building is for two reasons. One, they're testing the fire alarm. You may hear that. Mm-hmm. Two is we're in the children's children's building, because we're talking about, we get a lot of questions like, why do I have to
better than others?
Yeah. But specifically, we get a lot of questions about why do I have to listen to my mom or my dad, or you're not my mom and dad, like when they're in under another authoritative figure, they say, why do you're not
Wednesday nights or Sunday mornings,
Wednesday nights or
in the class at school.
In class at school, So we wanted to pull away from prayer, from the topic of prayer this week, and just kind of talk about something as simple as just honoring your father and your mother and father.
Honoring your mother and father. Have there been more tears shed over from kids and students over that phrase? Because I'll read where it's at, because this is the first place most people encounter this, right? Is in Exodus chapter 20, the 10 Commandments. If you're familiar with the Bible, this might be one of the passages that you're most familiar with, but paraphrasing a lot of the other stuff, it's don't take another idol in vain, or don't take the name of the Lord in vain, don't worship idols, don't commit murder, don't commit adultery, don't steal, don't lie on your neighbor, don't covet your neighbor's house or wife, big huge things.
Right.
And guess what? Amongst all that pile, kids and students read that and they're like, okay, I'm not going to murder anybody today. Right. I'm not going to do that. I'm
not going to steal.
But then they get to this part about
honor mom and dad. Yeah, honor your mother and father. And the thing about this list is because it's 10 Commandments, and where does it come down on the list? In order.
Man, I'm reading over it here, Caleb, and it looks like it's the first one after.
Well, it really doesn't matter. I guess my point is is a lot of people get, like the kids, their logic, they're like, hey, here's number one, this one's worse than this one, this one's worse. But the whole point of the Ten Commandments is that all of them are just as important as the other ones. So honoring your mom and dad
of each other
is just as relevant as not committing murder, not stealing. Like, it's that big of a deal, And have you ever been guilty of not honoring your parents, Matt?
Maybe once or twice. Let's
Just once or twice. That's impressive.
Or frequently. I had extremely kind and gracious parents, and I was a little bit of a goody two shoes, but I'm sure, like many who are watching, that there were just so many instances I look back on in my childhood and adolescence where I was so blatantly mean or did things to my brother that were just uncalled for,
right,
or silly.
Yeah.
And
your little big brother.
Now big at that point.
He's your little brother, but he's a big guy.
Yeah, especially now. So there are just these occasions I look back on. The story that comes to mind is one that I think is pertinent to students, and maybe even like some older students that we have listening, because it was like my junior or senior year of high school when I started like really diving into my faith and making it my own, and a lot of the head knowledge part of it was coming. A lot of information was coming at me fast and furious. So my mother and I had tension over my driving because if you can imagine that, yes. And Caleb's seeing this firsthand now with Caden, right? Mm-hmm. So at one point in time, I'm so consistent as a student. I'm a consistent part of my student ministry. I have a great relationship with my student ministry leader, Greg. I have a good relationship with my parents. It's not a broken relationship or anything, but Mom and I can never see eye to eye on the driving thing. And at one point in time, she's like, "You've got to drive closer to the speed limit. You've got to." And she's dying. My mom was an anxious person. And Mom, I know you're watching this. You'll see the same thing. You know how much I love you. So she's dying over how quickly she perceives my driving to be. And this is before Life 360 or anything like that.
Now,
so she's not
let me just clarify.
Yeah.
Are you over or under the speed limit? Like, she says you need to drive closer to the speed limit. Are you driving too slow?
No, I'm driving too fast.
Okay. So
yeah, she wants...
It's that anxiety.
But I'm never crazy. Like, I'm not doing the 20 or 25 miles an hour over thing that a lot of kids are doing. I'm 10, and I think that's moderate, right? Like the 8 to 10.
Right.
Mom doesn't think so. Mom's like, speed limit's 45. She's 45. At one point in time, I'm going to throw a word out here that people who are watching, you might not even recognize, but I am so full of myself and full of this theological information that I'm getting. At one point in time, I called my mother a legalist for trying so hard to push this speed limit thing on me, right? And if you're not sure what legalism and license are, that's this like deep theological conversation we have where...
Like, you take everything at such a face value that it's like, law of the land. I know where you're going.
Yeah, and I was... I was applying this like big church word that I had learned.
And how'd that go?
Such a wrong. Greg, my youth pastor, and I had a long dinner one night at Olive Garden about him explaining to me why that was such a terrible decision for me and how mean it was to my mother.
And I'm guessing you didn't set up that dinner.
No, Mom was like, "Hey, Greg, so I don't really know how to handle this. My son has called me a legalist for trying to tell him just to drive slower."
Yeah.
So
mine's not nearly that complicated.
That's a nuanced situation, but I think hopefully you see the rebellion. Yeah.
I was just rebellious. I can't. I think Mama Cheryl's on here, and she's not. I call her Mama Cheryl, and I would never rebel against her, but apparently I didn't have any problems rebelling against my real mom and dad when I was younger. I tested the limits maybe a little bit. And Mom, if you're watching, that admittance is there's a statute of limitations on pleading guilty to something that's that old. So, sorry. But no, I mean, I just knew all that. I don't know if I knew about that one. I was just bad, man. I was rebellious, and And ultimately, whether I knew about it or not, I wasn't honoring what they taught me. And so one of the things that we see in God's Word is that the basic principles of the Old Testament, because we know that was like kind of under the law, students are smart enough to say, well, the Ten Commandments are kind of like,
they do what I did. They twist it.
Yeah, they're not obsolete, but like they were written before Jesus. And so now that Jesus came to, abolish the law, to do away with the law, they're like, oh, well, that's kind of old school. Like, here's the problem with that. He addresses it again in Ephesians in the New Testament.
Yeah.
Ephesians 6.
Paul specifically addresses this
who
issue
walked
with
with
the
Jesus
church
and we've already talked about had the authority to speak on Jesus' behalf.
Yeah.
Says in chapter 6, verse 1, children, obey your parents in the Lord, because this is right. He quotes the Ten Commandments, honor your father and your mother, which is the first commandment with a promise so that it may go well with you and that you may have a long life in the land. So, what's the promise he's talking about, Matt?
That that your life will go well, that you'll have a long life in the land, which for the people at the time that they're receiving the Ten Commandments, this promised land was everything. It was the center of their lives, was trying to earn and conquer this promised land that Israel had been promised as being the people of God. Yep. So specifically, that's what the promise means at that point in time.
So deliverance into something that God has laid out, a final destination, right?
Yeah.
Like as far as principle.
Yeah.
So if we're honoring mom and dad, then we are striving to reach this destination within our Christian walk, which ultimately is to stand before God and answer for the things that we've done wrong, but also, be called a good and faithful servant, for doing what the instructions that he gave us. So how does this translate into just our walk with Christ? Why would honoring our mother and father be so important that it needed to be recorded this way, that both in the Old Testament and the New Testament, God would make sure that it was inspired to be written on stone tablets and then in Paul's writing? Why is it you think it's let's see, Mama Cheryl, you still there? Why do you think it's in the Old Testament and the New Testament? Let's see, she said, oh no, you didn't. I don't know what that was about. I don't know if she's still paying attention. Let's see, I'm going to give her a second to respond. Somebody else is watching too. I don't know who that is,
might be one of us, and we just don't know about it. I know we've.
Oh no, Abby's watching. Abby's watching.
Hey, Abby. Good morning, Abby.
Our children and youth intern.
Yes.
Abby, why do you think it's in the Old Testament and the New Testament? And what would it help us learn about our walk with the Lord? Let's see what she has to say. Come on. Oh, Mom's on. Your mom's on.
My mother's watching now. Mom, you can just pick up at this point.
Oh, I think my wife might be watching too. Because it's that important. But why is it important, Abby? Come on. You said because it's that important. Man. Why is it important? What would honoring our father and mother here on earth help us do with our relationship with God?
Do you think this goes back to something that we've already talked about?
Maybe.
Over the past couple months, starting out Timeout Tuesdays?
Maybe.
Okay. You've asked the question several times. Why don't you give the most succinct version of the answer that you think you could deliver? I know we're having responses pour in, but just for the sake of not ruining our knees in these chairs.
Yeah. The reason is that what we practice here on earth, everything we practice here on earth, sets a precedent for what we are going to do in heaven, right?
It's a good thought.
From worship, the way we worship here on earth, it's like practice to the way we pray, to the way we
commune and dialogue with God in prayer.
Right, the relationship that we have in God. And if we don't honor our physical mom and dad here on earth, Doesn't mean that we always have to agree with them, but we do have to respect them. Honoring means that we have to recognize that they are an authority figure in our life.
That's a good point. Honoring goes beyond just
Yeah.
strict obedience for the sake of obedience.
Yeah.
It goes into the attitude and the relationship that you have with your parents.
Right.
In terms of doing what they say.
That's right. And so that just translates into our relationship with our Heavenly Father. That's what it ultimately amounts to. Is like if I can sit down and have a real conversation with my mom and dad and take their advice, don't necessarily always agree with it, but if I can take their advice and apply it in some way. Because let's be honest, has God ever given you advice that you didn't agree with, but you had to take it and apply it?
I've read the Bible enough to know that it happens often.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, sometimes even God gives us advice or direction that we don't necessarily like. But it's so relevant because of our respect for His authoritative presence in our life and as our Father. So all of this is not just for these kids that ask us these questions. Going back to how we started this, kids that ask us, why do I have to listen to mom and dad? Or why do I have to listen to my teacher? Or why do I have... It's a representation of how much you respect the Lord if you are His child.
I didn't even know you were going that direction, but I think that's a very well done answer. I think that's a very well done answer. And really, it's easy for us to quote Exodus chapter 20 and the Ten Commandments, or for us to go here to the New Testament and be like, oh, it's here too, just listen to what I say. Or for you to tell your kids, for me to tell
the Bible says it, so we got to do it, because that goes back to that legalism thing that you were talking about.
Almost, yeah, misapplying it and twisting it a little bit. But I think that your answer, with a little bit more nuance and understanding that the reason we would seek to honor our father and mother doesn't have to do with the fact that our parents are perfect people, or that we honor them because they never make mistakes. It honors them because we recognize that God is the one who's put them in our lives for a specific reason, a specific purpose. Yeah,
and He is. I mean, we see Him called Father over and over and over and over in Scripture. And so, let's see what Mom had to say. If we don't honor our parents and listen to them, how can we establish a loving, respectful relationship with our Father?
That's great.
She's right there.
Perfect. Right along those same lines.
Yeah, and so I know that Abby and Nick have never not honored Mama Cheryl. Love you, Abby. I know that my son has tested with me, and you have a son and daughter, and even as young as they are, you know, that's why you have to discipline your kids and things like that. It's never comfortable. You know, the Bible even says that, you know, a father has to discipline his kids, and it's not comfortable for anybody.
Absolutely.
You know, but you have to do it, and it's because you're bringing them up to respect you, so that when you teach them about Jesus, they have that respect for His authority in their life, right?
Absolutely.
Did they ever tell you no?
They're toddlers. You know that. Yeah. You've had a toddler recently. Wesley's not that far removed from that. I know she does everything perfect now, but...
Yeah.
There is an important reminder, though. We're talking about this, verse 4, because I know what question people might automatically be thinking is this idea of why, especially like maybe an older student that we deal with who comes from a difficult background or something like that, or a kid that we're ministering to who's coming out of a difficult background with parents who are outside of Christianity, outside of morals whatsoever.
Or a dad who's a minister but also your wrestling coach.
Yeah, so difficult situations like that. Yeah. And there's a warning to parents here too. So we don't want to let parents off the hook. We don't want to let ourselves off the hook.
Right.
Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord, which is really what you just pointed to.
Yeah.
It's a process. We're all working together here for the same.
For sure.
The same thing.
For sure. Yes, I have. She said, "Oh, yes, they have. It is truly by the grace of God they're still here." And I don't. When she says here, I know
we both know.
Yeah, Mama Cheryl ain't playing.
Yeah.
My guess is that she's not talking about here as in the home, as in the house. I mean, I think she means here on Earth. Yes. Oh, that's good stuff. Well, all seriousness, it is going to be a shorter Timeout Tuesday, but I think we wanted to have a little lighthearted conversation, but. Recognize. I mean, this is a reminder for me because, my mom and dad can frustrate me, and I'm the oldest. Jenny's the oldest. We can get frustrated, but Just specifically, I can attest to the testimony that my family's walked through in this last week and a half with Jenny's dad passing away, that, you know, we look back and we talked about things when he made them so mad, you know, but ultimately at the end of the day, the testimony of him bringing up his kids is that he raised these 4 daughters to respect authority, to work hard, to honor the Lord, you know, and they look back and they go, he made me so mad when he did that. And then they would laugh about it, but look where I am now. Look at the discipline in my life that I have now. And so, didn't even think about bringing that up when we talked about talking about this, but, you know, as I look back, I go, all 4 of them are believers who, you know, strive to raise their children well, to know Jesus, and to walk under his authority. And they're not perfect either, you know, none of us are, but it's because of that foundation that Pop set, you know, for them. And that's pretty cool to look back on, because it's this legacy, so that when we do get to heaven with Christ, we have that, you know, established and recognize him as our ultimate authority.
Absolutely.
So
well spoken. Thank y'all for joining us today for Timeout Tuesday.
For sure.
That's good.
Yeah.
Now we'll see if we can get up. That's part of the real challenge here.
Wait, Jim. Okay. There's somebody else. Well, hey, look, we're going to shut it down after we got to our highest count of viewers, but we're glad you joined us. I'll be back next week. Matt's bailing. Something about vacation or something?
I guess if you want me to try and take time no video in, I could, but I don't know if that'll work with my schedule.
Yeah, because it's a Tuesday, which throws people off anyway, because we only work on
Wednesdays and Sundays. We're ministers. Wednesdays and Sundays.
Wednesdays and Sundays. So, you know, we confuse you already by doing Timeout
Honestly, it's
Tuesday.
Surprising that we're even here.
It is. At the church.
You want a bell? You want to just...
Yeah, let's go take the rest of the day off. All right. Love y'all.